Melissa.
I came home early to surprise my wife. Instead, I found clothes leading up the stairs like breadcrumbs to hell. The front door was unlocked. That should have been my first clue. Melissa never left doors unlocked. She was paranoid about home invasions, serial killers, and pretty much everything else that made for decent cable TV drama. But there it was, hanging open like an invitation to disaster. My work boots made no sound on the hardwood as I stepped inside. The living room looked normal except for the wine bottle on the coffee table, half empty, 2 glasses. One had lipstick on the rim that wasn't Melissa's shade. I heard laughter from upstairs. Melissa's laugh, the one she used to reserve for me before marriage became a business transaction and love became a performance review I kept failing. A men's shoe by the couch. Size 12, expensive running sneaker. Not mine. I wore size 10 work boots, the kind that left scuff marks on Melissa's precious floors. Another shoe by the stairs, then a sock, then another sock, a belt, a woman's blouse that I'd bought Melissa for Christmas, now crumpled like yesterday's newspaper. The trail led up the stairs like some twisted fairy tale. Follow the breadcrumbs, find the witch's house. Except in this version, I was both Hansel and Gretel, and the witch was my wife of 8 years. More laughter. A man's voice now, deep and confident. The kind of voice that sold protein shakes and promised to transform your life in 30 days, or your money back. I sat down in my recliner. The old leather chair that Melissa hated because it clashed with her designer living room aesthetic. I opened the side drawer and pulled out my father's Magnum, unloaded, like always. Dad had taught me gun safety before he taught me to drive. The weight felt familiar in my hands, comforting in a way that probably said something disturbing about my mental state. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for, Brian King's wife, Dana. We'd met at a few social gatherings. She seemed nice enough, if a bit too fond of wine and gossip. The FaceTime call connected after 3 rings. Dana's face appeared on screen, looking annoyed. "Evan, what's wrong? You look like death." "Hey, Dana," I said, keeping my voice level. "I need to show you something. You might want to sit down." "What are you talking about?" I turned the phone toward the stairs, toward the trail of clothes. "Recognize anything?" Dana's face went pale. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Is that Brian's shoe? Size 12 Nike Air Max. Retail price about $150. I looked it up. "Where are you right now?" "My house. Well, technically it's our house, but I'm the only one on the mortgage." I turned the phone back to face me. "They're upstairs, in my bedroom, on my sheets." Dana's face contorted with rage. "That son of a bitch. He told me he was working late at the gym." "Yeah, he's getting a real workout." I stood up, guns still in hand. "You want to hear them?" "Don't you dare hang up," she said. "I'm coming over. You know where I live? I've been to your barbecues, remember? Before my husband started screwing your wife?" The laughter upstairs got louder, more intimate. I felt something cold settle in my chest, like ice water in my veins. "Dana, when you get here, park across the street. Don't come to the door until I text you. This needs to be handled carefully." "Handled how?" "Trust me. I've been thinking about this for longer than you might imagine." I'd suspected for months. The late nights at the gym, the new underwear, the way she'd started showering immediately after coming home, the phone calls she'd take outside, the credit card charges for hotels when she was supposed to be at her sister's house. But suspecting and knowing are different animals. Suspecting is a dull ache. Knowing is a sharp blade that cuts clean through everything you thought you understood about your life. I ended the call and texted Deshaun Williams, my buddy from high school, who'd become a cop. "Need a favor. Might have a domestic situation developing at my place. Can you swing by in about 20 minutes? His response came back immediately. "On my way." The noises upstairs stopped. I heard footsteps on the floor above. The shower turned on. Perfect. I climbed the stairs slowly, phone in one hand, gun in the other. The bedroom door was open, clothes everywhere. The bed looked like a crime scene, sheets twisted and thrown aside. Through the bathroom door, I could see 2 figures in the shower. Melissa's red hair was unmistakable. The man was tall, muscular, with the kind of tan that came from spending more time at the gym than at an actual job. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. They emerged from the bathroom 15 minutes later, wrapped in my towels, laughing about something that I was apparently too stupid to understand. The laughter died when they saw me sitting there. "Evan," Melissa said, her voice hitting that high note it always did when she was caught in a lie. "You're home early." Yeah, I wanted to surprise you. I looked at Brian King. Up close, he was exactly what I'd expected. 6'2", perfect teeth, the kind of stubble that took 40 minutes to achieve. You must be Brian. Brian straightened up, puffing out his chest. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Trouble? I laughed. No trouble at all. I was just showing your wife the clothes trail you two left downstairs. My wife? Brian's face went white. You called Dana? She's on her way over, should be here any minute. Melissa stepped forward. Evan, let's be adults about this. Adults? I held up the gun. You mean like how adults communicate instead of sneaking around behind each other's backs? Is that thing loaded? Brian asked, backing toward the window. Does it matter? I stood up. You're in my house, wearing my towels, fresh from screwing my wife in my bed. Whether it's loaded or not seems like the least of your problems. Evan, please, Melissa said. We can work this out. Work what out? The fact that you've been lying to me for months. The fact that you've been using our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms. The fact that you told me you were visiting your sister when you were actually here with Captain Protein Shake? Brian tried to move toward the door. I stepped in front of him. Where are you going, champ? The party's just getting started. Look, I'm sorry about this, Brian said. But we're in love. Love? I laughed. You're a personal trainer who probably makes 20 grand a year. She's a real estate agent with a gambling problem and credit card debt. This isn't love. It's mutual desperation. You don't know anything about me, Brian said. I know you drive a leased BMW that you can't afford. I know you live in a studio apartment above the yoga studio on 5th Street. I know you've been married to Dana for 3 years, and you have a 10-year-old stepdaughter who calls you Dad. Brian's face went from white to red. How do you know all that? Because I'm not an idiot, unlike some people in this room. The doorbell rang downstairs. Then someone started pounding on the door. That would be Dana, I said. You two might want to get dressed. I walked downstairs, leaving them scrambling for clothes. Through the window, I could see Dana King pacing on my front porch like a caged animal. She was dressed in yoga pants and a tank top, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked ready for war. I opened the door. Dana, where are they? Upstairs, getting dressed. She pushed past me and headed for the stairs. I followed, curious to see how this would play out. Brian and Melissa were hastily putting on clothes when Dana burst into the bedroom. You piece of crap, she screamed at Brian. You told me you were working late. Dana, I can explain. Explain what? That you're screwing some married woman in her husband's bed? Melissa stepped forward. Look, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but Brian and I... Dana turned on her. Shut up. I wasn't talking to you. You can't just come into my house and... Your house? Dana laughed. Last I checked, the mortgage was in his name. She pointed at me. You're just the cheating wife who's about to lose everything. Brian tried to put his hand on Dana's shoulder. She slapped it away. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. Dana, please. Let's talk about this at home. Home? You mean our home that you've been lying to me about while you're playing house with this woman? I heard sirens in the distance. Right on time. Cops are coming, I said. Might want to keep the volume down. You called the cops? Melissa asked. I called a friend. Domestic disputes can get messy. Better to have witnesses. 2 police cars pulled up outside. I recognized Deshaun's voice talking to his partner on the radio. Brian King? Deshaun called from downstairs. We got a call about a disturbance. Brian looked at me. You set this up. I set up what? I came home to find my wife cheating on me. You want to explain to the nice officers why you're here? Deshaun appeared at the top of the stairs. He was a big man, 6'4", former football player who'd become a cop because he liked helping people. He looked around the room, taking in the scene. Evening, Evan. Ma'am. He nodded to Melissa. Sir, he said to Brian, we got a call about a domestic dispute. Everyone okay here? Just a misunderstanding, Brian said. Misunderstanding? Dana laughed. I caught my husband cheating. And you are? Deshaun asked. Dana King. That's my husband. She pointed at Brian. And that's his mistress. She pointed at Melissa. Deshaun looked at me. This your house, Evan? Yep. Mortgage is in my name. Has been for 8 years. And you, sir? Deshaun asked Brian. You live here? No, He was just leaving, I said. Weren't you, Brian? Brian looked around the room. Dana was staring at him with pure hatred. Melissa was trying to fix her hair in the mirror. I was sitting on the bed, still holding the gun. Yeah, Brian said. I was just leaving. Actually, Dana said, you're not going anywhere. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. I'm calling my lawyer. I want this documented. Dana, please. Please what? Please pretend this didn't happen. Please let you keep screwing around while I pay the bills and take care of your daughter. Deshaun stepped forward. All right, everyone needs to calm down, sir, he said to Brian. I'm going to need you to put your hands behind your back. What? Why? Because you're trespassing, and we have a domestic violence situation brewing. I'd rather sort this out at the station. I wasn't trespassing. She invited me. She's married, and this isn't her house. So yeah, you're trespassing. Deshaun handcuffed Brian and led him downstairs. Dana followed, still screaming about lawyers and divorce papers. Melissa and I were alone in the bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed, looking smaller than I'd seen her in years. This isn't how I wanted you to find out, she said quietly. How long? What? How long have you been screwing him? She looked at the floor. 4 months. 4 months? I set the gun down on the nightstand. And you were planning to tell me when? I don't know. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. You seemed pretty sure about what you wanted 20 minutes ago. She started crying. Real tears, not the fake ones she used when she wanted something. I'm sorry, Evan. I'm so sorry. Sorry you did it or sorry you got caught? Both. I don't know. I was unhappy and he made me feel good about myself. So this is my fault? No, that's not what I meant. I stood up and walked to the window. Deshaun was putting Brian in the back of the police car. Dana was pacing on the sidewalk, talking on her phone. I want you out, I said without turning around. What? I want you out of my house. Tonight. Evan, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. Work through what? The fact that you've been lying to me for months? The fact that you brought another man into our bed? The fact that you've been using our money to pay for hotels? I'll pay you back. With what? Your commission checks that you spend on clothes and spa treatments? She was quiet for a long moment. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Maybe Brian's studio apartment. Oh, wait, he's married too. This is still my house. No, it's not. It's my house. My name is on the deed. My name is on the mortgage. Your name is on nothing except the utility bills. I have rights. Yeah, you have the right to find a good lawyer. You're going to need one. I turned around. She was still sitting on the bed, looking lost. Pack a bag. Take whatever you need for a few days. We'll figure out the rest later. And if I refuse, then I'll call Deshaun back and have you arrested for trespassing. You can't do that. I live here. Not anymore, you don't. She stood up and walked to the closet. This isn't over, Evan. Yes, it is. That's chapter 1, sweetheart. She packed a bag while I watched from the doorway. When she was done, she stopped in front of me. You're making a mistake. We can fix this. The only mistake I made was trusting you in the first place. She walked downstairs and out the front door without another word. I watched from the window as she got into her car and drove away. Dana was still on the phone, but she waved at me before getting into her own car. Deshaun came back up to the house. You okay, man? I've been better. You want to press charges? Against who? My wife for being a cheating liar or Brian for being stupid enough to get caught? Trespassing charges against Brian might stick. Let me think about it. Deshaun nodded. Call me if you need anything. And Evan, you might want to change the locks. After he left, I sat back down in my recliner. The house felt different now. Quieter, emptier, but also cleaner somehow, like someone had finally opened the windows and let the fresh air in. I looked at the gun in my hand. Dad's old Magnum. He'd given it to me when I turned 18, along with a lecture about responsibility and the difference between being a man and being a fool. Sometimes, he'd said, the biggest mistake you can make is trusting someone who's shown you who they really are. I'd thought about that conversation a lot over the past few months. Every time Melissa came home late with a new excuse, every time she started a fight over nothing, every time she looked at me like I was something she'd stepped in. People show you who they are. You just have to be willing to see it. I put the gun back in the drawer and pulled out my laptop. Time to start documenting everything. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, text messages. I was going to need ammunition for what came next. The doorbell rang. I figured it was Deshaun coming back with more questions, but when I opened the door, it was Dana. Can I come in? Sure. She sat on the couch, looking exhausted. I just wanted to thank you. For what? For showing me the truth. I've suspected for months, but I kept making excuses. Tonight, I finally saw him for what he really is. What are you going to do? Divorce him. Take him for everything he's worth, which isn't much, but it's the principle of the thing. Yeah, I understand that. What about you? What's your plan? I sat down across from her. I'm going to destroy them both. Destroy them how? Legally, methodically, completely. She smiled for the first time since I'd known her. I like the sound of that. You want to help? What did you have in mind? I opened my laptop and showed her the spreadsheet I'd been working on. Names, dates, times, locations, financial records, text messages, photos, email addresses, social media accounts. I've been documenting everything for months, I said. I just needed proof. This is comprehensive. I'm a detail-oriented person. Always have been. What's the end game? Simple. I want her to lose everything. Her job, her friends, her family, her reputation. I want her to understand what it feels like to have someone you trust destroy your life. And Brian? Same thing, except he's easier to destroy because he's already living paycheck to paycheck. Dana looked at the screen. How long have you been planning this? Since the first time I found a hotel charge on our credit card that she couldn't explain. That was 3 months ago. You've been planning this for 3 months? I've been gathering evidence for 3 months. I've been planning this for about 6 hours. What do you need from me? I showed her a folder on the desktop labeled Brian King, Personal Information. I need you to help me understand his weaknesses, his insecurities, his fears, what makes him tick. He's terrified of his ex-wife. She has primary custody of his daughter, and she's always threatening to take her away completely if he doesn't pay child support on time. Interesting. What else? He's obsessed with his image. He spends more money on clothes and supplements than he makes at the gym. He's always borrowing money from me to cover his rent. How much money? Last month? About $800. He said he'd pay me back when he got his next commission check. Commission? I thought he was a personal trainer. He is, but he also sells supplements and protein shakes. It's all pyramid scheme nonsense, but he thinks he's going to get rich. I made notes on the laptop. What about his relationship with his stepdaughter? She adores him. It's the only genuine thing about him. He really does love that kid. Good, I can work with that. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not going to hurt a child, but I can use his love for her against him. Dana leaned back on the couch. You're scarier than I thought. I'm not scary. I'm just done being the nice guy who gets walked on. What's the first move? Tomorrow morning, I'm calling Vincent Rourke. He's a divorce attorney. Former Marine, specializes in hostile divorces. He's expensive, but he's worth it. And then? Then I'm going to make Melissa's life very interesting. Dana stayed for another hour, helping me organize the information I'd collected. By the time she left, I had a comprehensive dossier on both Brian and Melissa that would make a private investigator proud. After she left, I sat back down in my recliner and looked around my house. My house. Not our house anymore. My house. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I spent the rest of the night planning. By morning, I had a strategy that would systematically dismantle everything Melissa had built while she was busy destroying our marriage. The war was about to begin. The next morning, I called Vincent Rourke's office at exactly 9 o'clock. His secretary put me through immediately. Mr. Blaine, I heard you might be calling. Deshaun Williams is a friend of mine. He mentioned you might need some legal assistance. I need to file for divorce, and I need to do it right. Come in this afternoon. Bring everything you have. Documents, photos, financial records, everything. How everything is everything? If you've been planning this as long as Deshaun thinks you have, then you know what I need. I arrived at Vincent's office at 2 o'clock with 3 boxes of documents. He was exactly what I'd expected. 50-something, gray hair, expensive suit, the kind of handshake that could crack walnuts. Show me what you have, he said. I opened the first box. Bank statements going back 2 years. Credit card bills, hotel receipts, phone records, text message printouts, email screenshots. Jesus, he said, flipping through the pages. You've been busy. I like to be thorough. This is more than thorough. This is obsessive, but obsessive wins cases. We spent 3 hours going through everything. By the end, Vincent was smiling. Your wife is screwed, he said, and not in the way she's been enjoying lately. What can we get? Everything. The house, the car, alimony, probably her retirement account. She's been using marital funds to finance her affair. That's a big no-no in divorce court. What about Brian? That's trickier. He's not your spouse, so you can't go after him directly, but we can make his life unpleasant. How? Civil suit. Alienation of affection. It's an old law, but it still works. What does that mean? It means we can sue him for damages related to the breakdown of your marriage. We can go after his assets, his future income, everything. How much could we get? Depends on how much he has, but even if he's broke, the lawsuit will follow him around for years. Good luck getting a mortgage or a business loan with a judgment against you. I like the sound of that. There's more. We can also file for a restraining order. Keep him away from you, your house, your workplace. Make it very difficult for him to see your wife. Can we do that? Based on what happened yesterday? Absolutely. He trespassed on your property. He engaged in behavior that led to a domestic dispute. A judge will sign that restraining order without blinking. I left Vincent's office feeling better than I had in months. The paperwork would be filed by the end of the week. Melissa would be served with divorce papers at her office in front of her coworkers. Brian would be served with a lawsuit and a restraining order at his gym in front of his clients. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I put the rest of my plan into motion. I started with Melissa's job. She worked at a high-end real estate agency that prided itself on discretion and professionalism. Her boss, Patricia Hamilton, was a stern woman in her 60s who'd built the agency from nothing and had no tolerance for drama. I called Patricia's office and asked for a meeting. Mr. Blaine, this is unexpected. Is everything all right? I need to discuss some concerns about Melissa's behavior. It's affecting our family, and I'm worried it might affect her work. What kind of concerns? I'd rather discuss this in person. Are you available this afternoon? She agreed to meet me at 3 o'clock. I arrived with a folder containing some of the less explicit evidence of Melissa's affair. Hotel receipts during work hours, phone records showing hundreds of calls to Brian during business hours, photos of her car parked outside his apartment building when she was supposed to be showing houses. Patricia looked through the documents with increasing concern. This is very troubling, she said. We have strict policies about personal conduct. I'm not trying to get her fired. I just thought you should know what's going on. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. We'll handle it internally. Thank you. I just want what's best for everyone involved. That evening, Melissa called me. She was crying. Patricia put me on probation, she said. She says I've been using company time for personal business. That's unfortunate. You did this. You went to my office and poisoned them against me. I did what any concerned husband would do. I looked out for your best interests. My best interests? You're trying to destroy my career. I'm trying to save your career. Maybe now you'll focus on work instead of your boyfriend. He's not my boyfriend anymore. What happened? He broke up with me, said it was too complicated. Smart man. Probably realized he couldn't afford a lawyer. This is all your fault. My fault? I'm not the one who decided to have an affair. I'm coming over. We need to talk. No, you're not. You don't live here anymore. I have a key. I changed the locks. You can't do that. I have rights. Talk to your lawyer about your rights. I'm sure you can find a good one. She hung up. 20 minutes later, she was pounding on my front door. Evan, open this door! I looked out the window. She was standing on my porch in her work clothes, looking disheveled and desperate. Go away, Melissa. I'm not leaving until we talk. Then you're going to be out there all night. I'll call the police. Go ahead. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your trespassing on my property. She pounded on the door for another 10 minutes before giving up. I watched her sit on the porch steps, crying into her phone. An hour later, Brian's car pulled up. He got out and walked to the porch. I opened the window so I could hear their conversation. This is crazy, Melissa. We can't keep doing this. I don't have anywhere else to go. What about your sister? She won't talk to me. Evan called her and told her everything. He called your sister? He called everyone. My parents, my coworkers, my friends. He's trying to isolate me. Maybe we should just leave town. Start over somewhere else. With what money? I'm about to lose my job and you live in a studio apartment. I can get work anywhere. Personal training is personal training. And I can sell real estate anywhere. But we need money to start over. How much do you have saved? About $3,000. What about you? I owe Dana money from the divorce. And I owe you money. And I owe my ex-wife money for child support. So nothing? Pretty much nothing. They sat on the porch for another hour, talking about their options. None of them were good. By the time they left, Melissa looked like a broken woman. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was what I'd wanted, to see her suffer the way I'd suffered, to watch her world crumble the way she'd crumbled mine. But it didn't feel as good as I'd expected. The next morning, I got a call from Vincent. "We have a problem," he said. "Melissa hired a lawyer." "So, we expected that?" "She hired Richard Blackwood." "Who's Richard Blackwood?" "He's the best divorce attorney in the state. He's expensive, mean, and he doesn't lose cases." "How can she afford him?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out. His retainer alone is $50,000. She doesn't have $50,000. Then someone else is paying for it. And I have a feeling I know who. Brian? No, he's broke. But his wife isn't. Dana is paying for Melissa's lawyer. It would make sense. She hates Brian more than she hates Melissa. If she can help Melissa take you to the cleaners, it hurts Brian by proxy. That's insane. That's divorce law. People do crazy things when they're angry. What does this mean for us? It means we're in for a fight. Blackwood is going to challenge everything. He's going to claim you're hiding assets, that you're manipulating evidence, that you're harassing his client. Am I harassing her? Technically, yes, but it's legal harassment, so we're fine. What's our next move? We go to war. Full scorched earth. I'm going to make Melissa's life so miserable she'll beg for a settlement. How? Discovery. We're going to subpoena everything. Her phone records, her email accounts, her social media, her bank statements, her medical records, everything. Can we do that? In a divorce case? Absolutely. Privacy goes out the window when you're fighting over marital assets. What about Brian? Same thing. We're going to tear his life apart looking for hidden assets or evidence of the affair. This is getting complicated. No, it's getting expensive, but you can afford it. She can't. What do you mean? Richard Blackwood charges $800 an hour. Unless Dana King has unlimited funds, Melissa is going to run out of money fast. And then she'll have to represent herself or settle for a public defender. Either way, we win. The legal battle began in earnest the following week. Vincent filed motion after motion, each one more aggressive than the last. Melissa's lawyer responded with equal aggression. The court dates piled up. In the meantime, I continued my campaign of systematic destruction. I called Brian's gym and filed a complaint about his unprofessional conduct. I contacted his ex-wife and informed her about his recent legal troubles. I left anonymous reviews on his social media pages detailing his affair with a married woman. Brian's business started to suffer. Clients canceled appointments. His gym membership dropped. His boss at the fitness center called him in for a meeting about his personal issues affecting the workplace. Melissa's situation wasn't much better. She'd been demoted at work and was now showing low-end properties to first-time buyers instead of the luxury homes she'd specialized in. Her commission checks were a fraction of what they used to be, but the real damage was social. Word of the affair had spread through our small town like wildfire. People who'd been friends for years suddenly stopped calling. Invitations to social events dried up. Even her book club asked her to take a break until things settled down. I, on the other hand, was getting sympathy calls from everyone. Old friends checked in to see how I was doing. Co-workers brought me lunch. My neighbors offered to help with yard work. It was like I'd become a tragic hero in the town's ongoing soap opera. The first court date was scheduled for 6 weeks after the papers were filed. Vincent had prepared me for what to expect. Melissa's lawyer is going to paint you as a controlling, manipulative husband who drove his wife to seek comfort elsewhere, he said. He's going to claim you're using your superior financial position to bully her into a bad settlement. And our response? We're going to bury them in evidence. Phone records, hotel receipts, credit card statements. We're going to show that she's been systematically lying and stealing from you for months. What about the gun? What about it? Brian's going to claim I threatened them with it. Did you? I held it. I never pointed it at anyone or made any threats. Then it's not a problem. You were in your own home, you felt threatened by an intruder, and you exercised your legal right to protect yourself. Will that work? It'll work fine, especially when we point out that Brian was trespassing and Dana was the one who actually got violent. The courtroom was packed on the morning of the hearing. Half the town seemed to be there, including some of Melissa's co-workers and several of Brian's clients. The local newspaper had even sent a reporter. Judge Lorraine Bennett was a stern woman in her 50s who'd been on the bench for 20 years. She had a reputation for being fair but tough, especially when it came to cases involving adultery. Melissa's lawyer, Richard Blackwood, was everything Vincent had promised. Tall, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from winning cases for wealthy clients. Your Honor, he began. My client is the victim of a systematic campaign of harassment and intimidation by her estranged husband. Mr. Blaine has used his superior financial resources to destroy her career, her reputation, and her emotional well-being. Mr. Rourke, Judge Bennett said, your response? Vincent stood up. Your Honor, Mr. Blaine's estranged wife has been conducting an extramarital affair for 4 months, using marital funds to finance her activities. She has repeatedly lied to her husband about her whereabouts and has shown a pattern of deceptive behavior that goes to the heart of her character. Mr. Blackwood, do you dispute that your client was having an affair? My client's personal relationships are not relevant to the division of marital assets, Your Honor. What is relevant is Mr. Blaine's retaliatory behavior following the discovery of the affair. Actually, Mr. Blackwood, adultery is very relevant in this state when it comes to spousal support and property division. Mr. Rourke, please present your evidence. Vincent opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Your Honor, we have documented evidence of Mrs. Blaine's affair spanning 4 months, hotel receipts paid for with marital funds, phone records showing hundreds of calls to her paramour during work hours, and photographic evidence of her vehicle parked outside Mr. King's residence during times when she claimed to be working. Judge Bennett examined the documents. These are very thorough, Mr. Rourke. Thank you, Your Honor. We also have testimony from Mr. King's estranged wife who witnessed the affair firsthand. I object, Blackwood said. Mrs. King's testimony is biased and prejudicial. Overruled. Mrs. King, please stand. Dana stood up from the gallery. She looked nervous but determined. Mrs. King, did you witness your husband engaged in an affair with Mrs. Blaine? Yes, Your Honor. I saw them together in Mr. Blaine's bedroom on the night of March 15th. How did you come to witness this? Mr. Blaine called me and showed me the evidence. He was trying to help me understand what my husband was doing behind my back. And what was your reaction? I was angry. I confronted my husband and Mrs. Blaine immediately. Did Mr. Blaine threaten anyone during this confrontation? No, Your Honor. He was very calm, actually. He just sat there and let my husband and Mrs. Blaine hang themselves. Thank you, Mrs. King. You may sit down. Blackwood stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to cross-examine Mrs. King. Go ahead. Mrs. King, isn't it true that you're seeking a divorce from your husband? Yes. And isn't it true that you stand to benefit financially if Mrs. Blaine receives a smaller settlement in her divorce? I don't understand the question. If Mrs. Blaine gets less money from her divorce, your husband would be more likely to pay you alimony in your divorce proceedings. I suppose that's possible, but that's not why I'm here. Why are you here? Because Mr. Blaine asked me to tell the truth about what I saw. And what did you see exactly? I saw my husband cheating on me with Mrs. Blaine. Did you see them engaged in sexual activity? They were in towels coming out of the shower together. But you didn't actually see them having sex? No, but it was pretty obvious what had happened. So, you're speculating about what occurred? I'm telling you what I saw and what any reasonable person would conclude. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Bennett looked at her notes. Mr. Rourke, do you have any other evidence to present? Yes, Your Honor. We have Mr. Blaine's testimony about his wife's behavior over the past 4 months. I stood up and walked to the witness stand. I'd been dreading this moment, but Vincent had prepared me well. Mr. Blaine, please describe your wife's behavior in the months leading up to your discovery of the affair. She became secretive. She would take phone calls outside. She started working late several nights a week. She began showering immediately after coming home from work. She bought new underwear and clothes without telling me. Did you confront her about these changes? I asked her about them. She always had explanations. New client, difficult sale, gym membership, wanting to look good for work. Did you believe her explanations? At first, but the pattern became impossible to ignore. What pattern? The hotel charges on our credit card. She claimed they were for clients, but when I called the hotels, they said the rooms were registered to her and a male companion. How many hotel charges were there? 16 over 4 months. Total cost was about $3,000. $3,000 of marital funds used to finance an affair? Yes. Mr. Blaine, on the night you discovered the affair, did you threaten your wife or Mr. King? No. I held my father's gun, but I never pointed it at anyone or made any threats. Why did you have the gun? I felt threatened. There was a strange man in my house, and I didn't know his intentions. Did you know who Mr. King was at that time? I suspected he was the man my wife was seeing, but I wasn't certain until I saw them together. What was your emotional state during this confrontation? I was angry, hurt, betrayed, but I was also calm. I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. Preparing how? I'd been documenting everything: phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts. I knew this day would come. No further questions, Your Honor. Blackwood stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Blaine, you've testified that you'd been preparing for this confrontation for weeks. That suggests premeditation, doesn't it? I was preparing for the possibility that my suspicions were correct. You were planning to ambush your wife and her lover? I was planning to document the truth. You set up an elaborate scheme to humiliate your wife publicly? I called Mrs. King so she would know what her husband was doing. I thought she had a right to know. You recorded the confrontation, didn't you? I took photos of the clothes trail leading upstairs. I thought they might be useful later. Useful for what? For these proceedings. So you were already planning to divorce your wife before you caught her in the act? I was considering it. Her behavior had become impossible to ignore. But you didn't confront her about your suspicions? I tried to. She denied everything. So you decided to trap her instead? I decided to find out the truth. By humiliating her in front of her lover's wife? By documenting what was happening in my own home? Mr. Blaine, isn't it true that you've been systematically destroying your wife's reputation since that night? I've been telling people the truth about what she did. You called her employer and provided them with evidence of her affair. I provided them with evidence that she was using company time for personal business. You called her family and friends? I told them what happened. I thought they should know. You've been posting negative reviews about Mr. King's business. I've been sharing my experience with his professional conduct. So, you admit you've been conducting a campaign of harassment against your wife and her lover? I admit I've been holding them accountable for their actions. No further questions, Your Honor. I sat back down, feeling like I'd held my own. Vincent gave me a thumbs up. Mr. Blackwood, do you have any evidence to present? Judge Bennett asked. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call Mrs. Blaine to the stand. Melissa stood up and walked to the witness stand. She'd lost weight over the past few weeks, and she looked fragile in her conservative business suit. Mrs. Blaine, please describe your marriage to Mr. Blaine. We've been married for 8 years. At first, everything was fine. But over the past few years, Evan became increasingly controlling and emotionally distant. Can you give specific examples? He monitored my spending. He questioned where I was going and who I was with. He made me feel like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. Did this behavior affect your emotional well-being? Yes, I felt trapped and unhappy. I started to feel like I was losing myself. Is this what led you to seek comfort elsewhere? I didn't set out to have an affair. I met Brian at the gym, and he was kind to me. He listened to me. He made me feel valued. How long did this relationship last? About 4 months. Did you love Mr. King? I thought I did. I was confused and lonely. Mrs. Blaine, on the night your husband discovered the affair, did you feel threatened by his behavior? Yes. He was holding a gun and acting very strangely. He seemed calm, but it was a frightening kind of calm. Did you believe he might harm you or Mr. King? I wasn't sure. I'd never seen him like that before. What happened after your husband called Mrs. King? Everything became chaotic. Dana was screaming at Brian. The police came. Evan just sat there watching it all like it was entertainment. How did you feel? Humiliated? Betrayed? Angry? Betrayed by whom? By Evan. He set us up. He planned the whole thing. What has happened to your life since that night? Everything has fallen apart. I've been demoted at work. My friends won't talk to me. My family is disappointed in me. I've lost everything. Do you believe this is a proportionate response to your affair? No. I made a mistake, but I don't deserve to have my entire life destroyed. No further questions, Your Honor. Vincent stood up for cross-examination. Mrs. Blaine, you've testified that your husband was controlling and emotionally distant. Did he ever physically abuse you? No. Did he ever threaten to harm you? Not directly. Did he ever restrict your access to money or credit cards? No. Did he ever forbid you from seeing friends or family? No. So, when you say he was controlling, you mean he asked questions about your whereabouts? It was more than that. He was suspicious and jealous. Suspicious of what? Of my friendships, my work relationships. Were his suspicions justified? What do you mean? Were you, in fact, having an affair? Yes, but so his suspicions were correct. Yes. Mrs. Blaine, you've testified that you used marital funds to pay for hotel rooms during your affair. Is that correct? Yes. How much money did you spend? I don't remember exactly. According to these credit card statements, you spent $3,000 on hotel rooms over 4 months. Does that sound accurate? If you say so. Did you have your husband's permission to spend this money? We have a joint account. I don't need permission. But you lied to him about what the money was for? I told him it was for work. But it wasn't for work? No? So you lied to your husband and stole marital funds to finance your affair? I wouldn't put it that way. How would you put it? I made poor choices. Mrs. Blaine, you've testified that you felt your life was destroyed after your affair was discovered. But isn't it true that you destroyed your own life by choosing to have an affair? I made a mistake, but a mistake that lasted 4 months? I was unhappy. So, you decided to solve your marital problems by sleeping with another woman's husband? I wasn't thinking clearly. Were you thinking clearly when you spent $3,000 of your husband's money on hotel rooms? I knew it was wrong, but you did it anyway? Yes. No further questions, Your Honor. Melissa returned to her seat, looking defeated. Blackwood called Brian to the stand next. Brian had cleaned up for court. He wore a suit that looked expensive, but probably wasn't. His hair was perfectly styled, and he'd shaved off the stubble that had been his trademark. Mr. King, please describe your relationship with Mrs. Blaine. We met at the gym where I work. She was going through a difficult time in her marriage, and we became friends. When did the friendship become romantic? After a few weeks, she was lonely and unhappy. I was having problems in my own marriage. Did you know that Mrs. Blaine was married when you began the relationship? Yes. Did you know that you were jeopardizing both of your marriages? I knew it was complicated, but we couldn't help how we felt. Mr. King, on the night of March 15th, what happened when Mr. Blaine discovered you in his home? He was holding a gun and acting very strangely. He called my wife and made her watch us being humiliated. Did you feel threatened? Yes, I tried to leave, but he blocked the door. What was your emotional state? I was scared. I didn't know what he was going to do. What happened when your wife arrived? She was furious. She started screaming at me and Melissa. Then the police came. How has this incident affected your life? I've lost clients. My gym is considering terminating my contract. My wife is divorcing me. I'm being sued. Do you regret the affair? Yes. I hurt a lot of people, including myself. No further questions, Your Honor. Vincent stood up for cross-examination. Mr. King, you've testified that you and Mrs. Blaine couldn't help how you felt. But you could help what you did, couldn't you? I suppose so. You chose to pursue a relationship with a married woman? Yes. You chose to meet her at hotels? Yes. You chose to come to her home when you knew her husband might discover you? We thought he was at work. But you knew the risk? Yes. Mr. King, you've testified that you felt threatened by Mr. Blaine on the night of March 15th. Did he point the gun at you? No. Did he threaten to shoot you? No. Did he threaten to harm you in any way? Not directly. So you felt threatened by his presence, not by his actions? Yes. Mr. King, you were in his home, in his bedroom with his wife. Did you think he might be upset about that? I knew he would be upset. But you did it anyway? Yes. You've testified that you've lost clients and might lose your job. Do you think that's related to your professional conduct? What do you mean? You had an affair with a client's wife. Do you think that reflects poorly on your professional judgment? I wasn't thinking about work. You weren't thinking about the consequences of your actions? No. Mr. King, are you currently living with Mrs. Blaine? No. Why not? It's complicated. Because you're both married to other people? Yes. Because you both have legal and financial obligations to your spouses? Yes. So this relationship that you couldn't help but pursue has left you both homeless and broke? I guess so. No further questions, Your Honor. Brian returned to his seat looking like he'd been run over by a truck. Judge Bennett called for a recess. During the break, Vincent and I talked in the hallway. How do you think it's going? I asked. Better than expected. Blackwood is good, but the evidence is overwhelming. Melissa's testimony was weak, and Brian came across as a selfish idiot. What happens next? Closing arguments? Then the judge makes her decision. She could rule today, or she could take it under advisement. What do you think she'll decide? I think you're going to get everything you asked for. The house, the car, no alimony. She might even order Melissa to pay your legal fees. And the civil suit against Brian? That's a separate case, but today's testimony will help. Brian basically admitted to having an affair with your wife and using your home to do it. When court resumed, both lawyers gave their closing arguments. Blackwood tried to paint Melissa as a victim of emotional abuse who'd made a desperate mistake. Vincent stuck to the facts: adultery, theft of marital funds, and a pattern of deception. Judge Bennett deliberated for 20 minutes before returning with her decision. This case involves the breakdown of a marriage due to adultery and the misuse of marital funds. While I understand that marriages can be difficult and people can make mistakes, Mrs. Blaine's behavior over the past 4 months demonstrates a pattern of deception and financial impropriety that cannot be ignored. She looked directly at Melissa. Mrs. Blaine, you used marital funds to finance an extramarital affair. You lied to your husband repeatedly about your whereabouts and activities. You brought your paramour into the marital home. These actions constitute a breach of your fiduciary duty to your spouse. Then she looked at me. Mr. Blaine, while I understand your anger and hurt, I caution you against allowing those emotions to drive you to behavior that could be construed as harassment or intimidation. Therefore, I hereby grant the divorce petition. Mr. Blaine will retain the marital home and all associated assets. Mrs. Blaine will retain her personal belongings and her vehicle. No alimony will be awarded. Mrs. Blaine will be responsible for her own legal fees and will reimburse Mr. Blaine for 50% of his legal costs. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Melissa burst into tears. Brian looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. Furthermore, Judge Bennett continued, I am granting Mr. Blaine's request for a restraining order against Mr. King. Mr. King is to have no contact with Mr. Blaine, his property, or his workplace. Court is adjourned. I walked out of the courthouse feeling victorious but empty. I'd won everything I had asked for, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like survival. Vincent shook my hand on the courthouse steps. Congratulations. You just won one of the most decisive divorce cases I've ever seen. Thanks. What's next? The civil suit against Brian. We'll file that next week. How long will that take? 6 months, maybe less. He'll probably settle out of court. What about Melissa? She'll probably appeal, but she doesn't have grounds. The evidence was overwhelming. I drove home to my empty house and sat in my recliner, the same chair where this whole thing had started 6 weeks ago. The gun was still in the drawer, unloaded and unused. I thought about calling someone to celebrate, but I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt like I'd won a war, but lost something important in the process. That evening, Dana called me. I heard you won, she said. Yeah. How did your case go? Brian didn't contest anything. He gave me everything I asked for, what little there was. Are you happy? I'm satisfied. Justice was served. What happens now? I move on, start over, maybe date someone who isn't married to someone else. Good plan. What about you? Any plans? I'm thinking about selling the house. Too many memories. Where would you go? I don't know. Maybe somewhere where people don't know the story. You could stay and enjoy your victory. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like I destroyed 3 lives, including my own. You didn't destroy anything. You just revealed what was already broken. Maybe. Evan, you did the right thing. They were stealing from you, lying to you, humiliating you. You had every right to fight back. I know. I just thought it would feel better. It will. Give it time. After we hung up, I sat in the dark house and thought about the past 2 months. I'd systematically destroyed my wife's life and her lover's life. I'd taken everything they cared about and reduced it to rubble. But I'd also lost everything I'd cared about. My marriage, my trust in people, my faith in love. In destroying them, I'd destroyed parts of myself. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Vincent. Brian King wants to settle the civil suit, he said. For how much? $50,000. He doesn't have $50,000. No, but his ex-wife does. She's paying the settlement to make this go away. Dana is paying? Yeah, apparently she'd rather pay the money than have this drag on for months. That's generous of her. She's also buying his silence. Part of the settlement includes a non-disclosure agreement. He can't talk about the affair or the divorce proceedings. What about Melissa? She's broke, living in a studio apartment, working at a discount real estate agency. She's not a threat to anyone anymore. And Brian? He's moving to another state. starting over as a personal trainer at some chain gym. So it's over? It's over. You won. I accepted the settlement. The money went into a savings account that I never touched. It felt like blood money, payment for destroying someone's life. 6 months later, I sold the house and moved to a different city. I got a job at a tech company and rented a small apartment. I didn't date. I didn't make friends. I just worked and went home and sat in my new recliner. Sometimes I thought about calling Melissa to see how she was doing, but I never did. What would be the point? We'd both moved on to different lives, different cities, different versions of ourselves. I heard through mutual friends that she'd gotten remarried. Some guy she'd met at her new job. I hoped she was happy. I hoped she'd learned something from our disaster. Brian had disappeared completely. No social media, no forwarding address. He'd become a ghost, which was probably for the best. Dana had started dating a widower from her book club. She seemed happy in the photos I saw on social media. She'd survived her ordeal better than the rest of us. One evening, about a year after the divorce, I was sitting in my apartment when someone knocked on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I rarely had visitors. I opened the door to find a young man in his 20s. He was tall, athletic, with dark hair and serious eyes. "Are you Evan Blaine?" he asked. "Yes. Who are you?" "I'm Jake King, Brian's stepson." I stared at him. "What do you want?" "I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" "For exposing my stepfather for what he really was." "I don't understand." "Can I come in?" I let him into my apartment. He sat on my couch and looked around. "Nice place," he said. "Thanks. Why did you want to thank me?" "Because you saved my mother from wasting any more of her life on Brian." "I didn't do it for her. I did it for me." "I know, but the result was the same. She's happy now, really happy, for the first time in years." "That's good." Brian was never a good stepfather. He was selfish and immature, but my mom loved him, or thought she did. She would have stayed with him forever if you hadn't exposed the affair. "What happened to Brian?" "He's working at a gym in Phoenix, lives in a one-bedroom apartment, drives a 10-year-old Honda. He calls sometimes, but Mom doesn't answer." "Do you miss him?" "No, I'm glad he's gone. We're all better off without him." "What about your mother? Does she miss him?" "At first, yeah, but she's moved on. She's dating a good man now, someone who treats her right." "I'm glad." "Are you? Really?" I thought about it. "Yes. I never wanted to hurt innocent people. I just wanted justice." "You got it, and you gave it to us too." He stood up to leave. "I just wanted you to know that what you did had consequences beyond what you probably intended. Good consequences. Thank you for telling me. Take care of yourself, Mr. Blaine. You deserve to be happy too." After he left, I sat in my recliner and thought about what he'd said. For the first time in over a year, I felt like maybe I hadn't just destroyed everything. Maybe I'd also saved something. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There was a woman at work who'd been asking me to get coffee for months. I'd always said no, but maybe it was time to try again. Maybe it was time to start building something instead of just tearing things down. I dialed her number. "Sarah, it's Evan. I was wondering if you'd like to get dinner sometime." "I'd love to," she said. "I was beginning to think you'd never ask. I was working through some things, but I think I'm ready now." "Good. I'm glad." We made plans for the following weekend. After I hung up, I looked around my apartment. It was small and sparse, but it was mine. Clean, honest. A place where I could start over. I opened the drawer in my end table and pulled out my father's Magnum. I'd been carrying it with me from place to place, but I'd never loaded it. It was just a reminder of the night everything changed. I walked to my closet and put the gun in a box on the top shelf. I didn't need it anymore. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was just a man who'd learned that sometimes you have to tear down the old house before you can build a new one. The next morning, I woke up and made coffee. I read the newspaper. I showered and got dressed and went to work. Normal things. Peaceful things. At lunch, I walked to the park across from my office building. There was a bench where I liked to sit and watch people walk by. Families with children, couples holding hands, old people feeding pigeons, life continuing, despite everything. I thought about Melissa sometimes, not with anger anymore, but with something closer to pity. She'd made choices that destroyed her life. But she'd also been destroyed by those choices. We'd both paid a price for what happened. I thought about Brian less often. He'd been a catalyst, not a real person, a symbol of everything that was wrong with my marriage, not the cause of it. The marriage had been broken long before Brian King came along. He'd just been the symptom, not the disease. I finished my sandwich and walked back to the office. There was work to do, projects to complete, a life to build. That evening, I called my parents. We talked for an hour about normal things, the weather, their garden, my job. They didn't ask about the divorce anymore. They could hear in my voice that I was healing. "You sound good," my mother said. "Better than you have in months." "I feel good. For the first time in a long time." "That's wonderful, honey. We're proud of you." "For what?" "For surviving, for not becoming bitter, for finding a way to move forward." "I had good teachers. Your father and we've been through our share of troubles, but we learned that the only way to win is to keep living, to keep loving, to keep hoping." "I'm trying." That's all anyone can do. After we hung up, I sat in my recliner and thought about hope. For months, I'd been focused on revenge, on making people pay for what they'd done to me. But revenge was just another form of prison. It kept you trapped in the past, reliving the pain over and over. Hope was different. Hope was about the future, about possibilities, about the chance that tomorrow might be better than today. I had a date with Sarah on Saturday. I was nervous about it, but also excited. It had been a long time since I'd felt excited about anything. Maybe it was time to start again. Saturday came, and I met Sarah at a small Italian restaurant downtown. She was wearing a blue dress that brought out her eyes, and she smiled when she saw me. "You look nice," she said. "So do you." We ordered wine and talked about work, about books, about places we'd traveled. Normal first date conversation. It felt good to talk about something other than divorce and betrayal and revenge. "Can I ask you something?" she said over dessert. "Sure." "Why did you finally ask me out? I was beginning to think you weren't interested." "I was going through a difficult time. I didn't want to drag anyone else into it." "The divorce?" "Yeah. It's over now. It's over." "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, sad, hopeful." "Hopeful?" "I'm sitting here with a beautiful woman talking about books and travel instead of lawyers and court dates. That feels like progress." She smiled. "I'm glad you asked me out." "Me too." We walked back to her car, and she kissed me goodnight. A soft, gentle kiss that tasted like wine and possibility. "I'd like to see you again," she said. "I'd like that too." I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. The apartment didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a beginning instead of an ending. I sat in my recliner and thought about the past year, the discovery of the affair, the confrontation, the divorce, the systematic destruction of 2 lives. I'd won everything I'd fought for, the house, the money, the satisfaction of seeing my enemies defeated. But I'd also learned something more important. Revenge was like a drug. It felt good at first, but it left you empty afterward. It didn't heal the hurt. It just created more hurt. The real victory wasn't in destroying Melissa and Brian. The real victory was in surviving, in healing, in finding a way to trust again. I thought about my father's gun, sitting in the box on my closet shelf. I'd never needed it. The real weapon had been patience, planning, the willingness to let people destroy themselves. But I didn't need weapons anymore. I needed hope. I needed love. I needed the courage to build something new. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photo Sarah had sent me earlier. She was at a coffee shop smiling at the camera. She looked happy, genuine, uncomplicated. I typed a message. "Thank you for a wonderful evening. I'm looking forward to seeing you again." Her response came back immediately. "Me too. Sweet dreams." I turned off the lights and went to bed. For the first time in over a year, I slept peacefully. No dreams of revenge, no nightmares of betrayal. Just the quiet rest of a man who'd finally learned the difference between winning and healing. The next morning, I woke up and made coffee. I sat in my recliner and read the newspaper. Normal things. Peaceful things. Outside my window, the city was waking up. People were going to work, walking their dogs, living their lives. The world had kept turning while I'd been focused on revenge. Now, I was ready to turn with it. I finished my coffee and got dressed. I had errands to run, groceries to buy, a life to live. As I walked to my car, I thought about the night I'd sat in my old recliner with my father's gun, waiting for my wife to come downstairs. I'd been a different man then. Hurt, angry, desperate for justice. I'd gotten my justice, but I'd also gotten something better. I'd gotten free. The gun was still in the box on my closet shelf. I'd probably never touch it again. I didn't need it anymore. I'd found a better way to win. I drove to the grocery store and bought food for the week. I stopped at the bookstore and bought a novel Sarah had recommended. I went to the coffee shop and sat by the window, watching people walk by. Life. Simple, ordinary, beautiful life. That evening, Sarah called. "How was your day?" she asked. "Good, quiet. I went to the bookstore and bought that novel you mentioned." "Which one?" "The one about second chances?" "Perfect. I think you'll like it." "I hope so. I'm trying to learn about second chances." "We all are." We talked for an hour about books and movies and plans for the weekend. Normal conversation, the kind of conversation that builds relationships instead of destroying them. After we hung up, I sat in my recliner and opened the novel. The first line was, "Some stories end with revenge. The best ones begin with forgiveness." I smiled and kept reading. 3 months later, Sarah and I were having dinner at the same Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date. We'd been seeing each other regularly, taking things slow, building something real. "I have something to tell you," she said over dessert. "What's that?" "I love you." I looked at her across the table. Her eyes were bright, her smile was genuine. She was offering me something I'd thought was lost forever. "I love you too," I said. It was the first time I'd said those words to anyone since Melissa. They felt strange on my tongue, but also right, like coming home after a long journey. We went back to my apartment and made love for the first time. It was gentle and sweet, and nothing like the angry, desperate sex I'd had with Melissa toward the end of our marriage. Afterward, we lay in bed talking about the future, about plans and dreams and possibilities. "Are you happy?" she asked. "Yes, for the first time in years, I'm actually happy." "Good. You deserve to be happy. So do you." "I am happy, with you." I held her close and thought about the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal, the revenge, the slow process of healing.